Hello, and welcome to Wrestling Academy, episode 10. I am your headmaster. My name is Michael Classic, and with me, as always, is your homecoming king, Samee Junio. Samee, how are you doing this week?
I'm feeling good, Michael. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good, but I can't help but notice you got some gold peeking out from behind your head. What's going on there?
Oh my. This gold right here. Hold on, my camera is my mirror reversed. Yeah, it is the WWE World Heavyweight Championship that Randy Orton retired, and there it is dangling from my wall. And oh boy, is it so fun to wear it around the house.
Yeah, and I have to say that Samee has been, I've been getting photo after photo, Instagram story after Instagram story of Samee just draped in gold and looking pretty good, if I could say so myself. Just gold suits you, and we gotta get you more championship gold. That's what this is teaching me.
Headmaster, I was already looking at another one, and I shouldn't.
No, I think you should. But I also was noticing that you were showing the belt off, and it was inspiring other people to show off their gold as well. And I think I would like to put that out to our Wrestling Academy audience. Like, if you have any title belts that you've ever been ashamed to wear, definitely tag us. Like, show us your gold, send it to us, 100%. Tag Wrestling Academy, and we want to share your gold too. Like, I think, I'm going to be honest with you, it inspired me to start wearing my title belt a little bit more. And I think it just kind of brings every outfit together a little bit. I think everybody looks good with a little bit of gold peeking out.
I think everybody should have, like basics in your wardrobe or whatever. But I think that a lot of people forget that a giant wrestling title championship belt is exactly what you need to tie everything together. You're right.
It goes with everything. I was wearing khakis. The title belt made it look good. It was good.
Yeah, khakis? Excuse me.
Gold and khakis. Who knew?
We knew now.
Yeah. So if you have gold and you want to share it with somebody, please share it with us. And we would like to share it with the world. We think everybody looks good in gold, so show us your gold. So tag us, Wrestling Academy Pod, on Instagram or TikTok or wherever, and we'll share the gold with you.
Oh, my. And what is Wrestling Academy, you ask?
Samee, I'm so glad that you asked. So Wrestling Academy is the podcast you're listening to, started by the two of us. And I think you can attest, you're a newer fan. I'm a lifelong fan, but getting into wrestling can be a little bit complicated. So we wanted to create a place where we dove into wrestling history to break it all down for you and hopefully get you as excited about it as we are, because I think you can attest, the episode we did today, we got to jump into like a really cool figure in Japanese wrestling that I wouldn't have sought out otherwise, but it was so cool to just get in and talk about the career of Jushin Thunder Liger. That's who we're going to be talking about today.
It was really excellent. We're following up Terry Funk, legend, with Jushin Thunder Liger, also legend. You spoke a little bit about being excited about wrestling, and through the editing of our Royal Rumble episode, you found somebody very excited about wrestling.
For our Royal Rumble episode, when we were going through the pay-per-view, we noticed that there was a kid in the background of pretty much every shot of the 2008 Royal Rumble who was just mugging to the camera basically the whole time. The only thing we know for sure about him is he's wearing a Ween t-shirt. And so Samee and I, we became obsessed with, we're calling him Ween Kid. Samee and I became obsessed with Ween Kid. We put out the call on social media. Does anybody know who Ween Kid is? And it seems like so far we haven't gotten any clues, but we've gotten a lot of people who are very supportive of our search. So I think we wanted to...
A lot of shares.
We wanted to officially, on the podcast, declare that the search for Ween Kid has begun.
Yeah, so if you have any insight, like hot tips, tag us on Instagram or Twitter, TikTok, and follow that and include hashtag #WhoisWeenKid.
We're going full unsolved mysteries here. We want, if you have any leads, like, were you at the Royal Rumble with Ween Kid? Are you Ween Kid? Do you know Ween Kid? Is Ween Kid a mass hallucination? Whatever you know, we need to know what you know. So we set up an anonymous tip line on our website, wrestlingacademy.university. So if you have any hints, let us know there. Or if you want to tag us on any of our socials, please feel free. Because we're not going to rest until we find the truth about hashtag who is Ween Kid?
Who is Ween Kid?
Who is Ween Kid?
Who is Ween Kid? And look, this isn't going to be a super weird thing. At the very least, we just want to talk.
Yeah, we just want to interview him on the podcast. So nothing weird. We just think Ween Kid, if you're listening, we think you're really funny and we'd love to talk to you about wrestling a little bit. So
100%.
That's it. Nothing creepy or weird. We just thought we think you're cool, and yeah, Ween Kid, we just want to talk. What would you do if we pull this thread so far that it's like, dude, Ween Kid never existed? He's a mass solution. He's in our minds.
Oh man. Well, number one, I feel like the hallucination would have started with your video editing. So it would be congrats on making a really fun joke in Photoshop.
Well, I guess what I was thinking is it's the thriller movie style. We get to it and someone's like, I'm looking at the clips. There was never a Ween Kid. And we're like, what?
No.
But no, he was there.
Michael, isn't that you and Samee in one Ween shirt?
No, it's like, no, I swear. The Undertaker came out and he was doing the pallbearer, like, ooh, like, I swear he was there. And they're like, no, dude.
He blew kisses.
Yes, he blew kisses. He blew kisses at Vicky Guerrero. And they're like, no, dude, he never did. He was never there.
Oh my God. That would be... I would probably puke. Also, I think this is a good time to admit that I've never listened to a Ween song.
So that's the homework. Audience, you help us find Ween Kid. And in addition, Samee will listen to one Ween song and we'll check back next week to see what you think.
For 100 subscribers on YouTube, I will listen to one song.
Entire Ween song. Because Samee, I think that's a thing. That might help you get into you got to get into the mind of Ween Kid to be like, okay, first you have to know, why does he love Ween? So we can crack that and then we can think like Ween Kid and that will help us find him.
How much Ween have you been consuming since this discovery?
I feel like I've OD'd on Ween, dude. I just feel like I've been living the Ween lifestyle ever since 2000. We watched the 2008 Royal Rumble. I've had a full on Ween overdose, and then Samee, we'll get you to just again. We gotta get in the mindset of Ween Kid if we want to find him. So we got to know what he loves.
Oh my gosh!
So
you're right.
If anybody has any leads or clues, go to our website wrestlingacademy.university. We have our tip line there, or just tag us hashtag Who is Ween Kid?
Who is Ween Kid?
We're gonna find him. We're gonna interview him, and we're all gonna just talk about wrestling. It's like again, we're making it sound like it's gonna be weird. It's fine. It'll be fine.
No.
Samee and I are both normal people who can talk to adults.
Maybe. We'll see.
Well, if it's anything like our commentary skills,
well, I'll freeze, and then you'll be really great. So it'll be good. It'll just be like every other episode of Wrestling Academy.
Okay. And then, as always, we're still on the road to getting 1,000 subscribers. And if we do, Samee will put me through a table for real. And I think just kind of based on the research we've been doing this episode, you may have a new method that you would want to put me through a table with.
Yeah, I think I want to power bomb you through a table.
You complain about your knees every single episode, and to power bomb someone is you're almost exclusively using your knees.
That's fine. It'll just be when I complain about my knees after power bombing you, it'll be from the power bomb and not that my left legs, meniscus, and ACL are partially torn. Maybe it'll be all of the way torn by the end. Okay, well, maybe in the spirit of our subject this week, maybe I'll Kopo kick you instead.
That'd be cool. Ooh.
That would be really fun. All right. Well, speaking of our subject this week, shall we get into him?
Let's dive in. I can't wait. And I think before we fully jump into the episode, I just feel like when I was a little kid and I first got really into wrestling, there was a Christmas one year where my mom got me a book of professional wrestlers, and it was just a book, a bunch of pictures, stuff like that. And it was all from the 80s, and so I didn't recognize any of the people in the book. And so I was just kind of flipping through being like, Abdullah the Butcher, who's this? Like, I don't know who this is. I don't know who any of these people are.
He's in a book?
He's in a book. But the other person, when I flipped to it, the one person that really caught my attention, it's just been in the back of my head ever since I was a kid with this book, was Jushin Liger. It was just a picture of this. Again, the mask, and I think the way to explain it to people who don't really know, I've always kind of looked at him. He kind of looks like a Power Ranger a little bit. It's got that sort of very superhero scheme, but he also has a very cool mask and then long, crazy hair. And so it all just kind of works together for, especially if you're a little kid, you look at it and you're like, wrestling, who is this? And it was Jushin Liger. So he's always been a wrestler I've been super intrigued about ever since I was a kid. And I was so happy that we finally get to dedicate an episode to getting to know him a little bit better.
I'm very, very excited. And I'm so glad you shared that story. You didn't tell me about that before we recorded. That's very sweet.
Yeah.
He is our cruiserweight short king. He was born in Hiroshima on November 10th, 1964. I mentioned the date and year because he's a Scorpio. And he's also 56 years old in the year 2024. And he only retired in 2020?
Yeah. So
he's a 36-year-long career.
And I think that was a thing, too, that especially when we get to the later part of the feud, it's like, yeah, I really like that we've been on a kick lately of almost exclusively talking about older wrestlers and being like, hey, just because you're 50 years old, you could still get pile drivered. It's all right. Like, age is just a number, baby.
Age is just a number. And it's really fun. Well, I guess it was fun, but it was interesting that Jushin was wrestling up until 2020, but he was always in his costume. Like, he never really took it off. And I just feel like that just had to have gotten so sweaty and bad after the years. I don't know why my mind went there. Let's continue.
Yeah, I also think that helped with his legacy too, where much like Spider-Man, the reason he's so relatable is because it's like, oh, anybody could be under that costume. You know, I could relate to it. Anybody could do it. And so I do think that really helped Jushin Liger over the years of just for 35 years, he's only ever really been in the costume. He doesn't take it off too much. And so you never really see him age. And so it's just, oh man, here's this guy who's been a constant on my TV for 30 years. Of course he's going to become beloved because he's just this timeless superhero figure that's wrestling for you. You could have grown up with him.
And a lot of people did, and he's considered a legend. He's wrestled in around 4,000 matches. He's been with New Japan his whole entire career, but he's been in all different promotions, including ones that we've talked about, WCW, TNA, ROH. I think he also appeared at AEW at some point. He's in the WWE Hall of Fame.
He popped back into NXT to wrestle one match.
Oh, yes. There you go. That's the one I was thinking about. So he hadn't, somebody who's been in the business for 36 years does not walk away without having incredible gold, as we were talking about earlier, draping in gold. So here are some things that Jushin Liger has achieved, some titles that he's held throughout his career. He's held the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Championship 11 times, which I think is a record. He's held the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Tag Team Championship 6 times. He's had the WCW Light Heavyweight Championship. He's held the WWE Light Heavyweight Championship. And basically, if a promotion had a short king weight class, our boy swooped in and held that title. Well, and speaking of being short, Keiichi Yamada, which is Jushin's real name, applied to the New Japan Pro Wrestling Dojo and was initially rejected because he wasn't tall enough. And so he's 5'7". Michael, you're on the taller end of my height spectrum, but what do you think you'd be rejected from for being too short?
You actually just unlocked a really painful memory for me, Sam. So
uh-oh.
I remember when I was maybe 7 years old, I was at the pool and I really wanted to jump off the high dive. And a lot of the older kids were like, oh, sorry, it's just for big kids. Little kids can't go on the high dive. And they're like,
oh,
yeah.
No.
And then this kid looked me directly in the face and went, you can't go up there, shorty. And then I went, maybe I don't want to go up there, Tolly. And then I like fucking ran
no.
And in my mind, I was like, I'll never be short again. And then I vowed to grow to be 5'11" and a half, 6 feet, depending on who you talk to. And I achieved that goal. So that was where it was born. I was like, no, I'm determined to be on the taller end, depending on who you talk to, because I know a lot of short people who think I'm tall. And then I know a lot of people who are tall who don't think I'm tall at all. So.
Well, you heard it here first, folks. Manifesting your height is doable.
Yeah,
it actually happens.
You need somebody to tease you about it when you're a kid, and then you'll grow out of spite, because that's what happened to me.
What else do you do out of spite, Michael?
Live my fucking life, dude.
And Keiichi spitefully left Japan and went to Mexico because he really, really wanted to wrestle, and nobody could tell him no. So he goes to Mexico, and the lore is that New Japan officials went to visit him, and he looked like he was starving, and they felt really, really bad. So they brought him back, and then he was allowed to debut at age 19 in 1984. And his debut match was the first wrestling match held at the Tokyo Dome. What a fun fact, Michael.
Very cool. So I think for people who are maybe newer to wrestling, the Tokyo Dome is kind of the site of where New Japan holds its largest event, Wrestle Kingdom. And so they have a very deep history with the Tokyo Dome. And so the fact that he got to make his debut kind of on one of the grandest stages New Japan has to offer, that's pretty cool. And it is also incredibly amazing that we were this close to never having a Jushin Liger. He was rejected, and he almost he could have been bummed out and never chose to never wrestle again. And he just so happened to figure out a path to his goal again, and was able to get it. But I don't know. That one blows my mind of just truly how close it was just to not ever happening. This guy who's had a 30-year career and is one of the most
right.
beloved New Japan figures was almost like, well, shit, they said no. Well, I guess I'm done. Like that almost happened.
And that's like a little bit scary. Like, how many things have you encountered in your life that somebody said no to you initially and then you gave up?
I hear what you're saying. I personally have never been rejected from anything. So I can understand how that might feel for other people, but like, yeah, I just can't relate to it personally.
I mean, you're perfect. You're the headmaster.
Yeah.
Back to Jushin. So he's wrestling around in Japan, but he leaves again for another excursion to Europe. And we have yet to hear about somebody going to Europe. A lot of the time we talk about wrestlers going and excursioning to Japan. So this did strike me as a little bit odd, because I'm very unfamiliar with what was going on with wrestling in Europe then, and then also admittedly right now.
European wrestling, very cool. I think, honestly, I think you would like it a lot. I would say it's closer to the Japanese hard-hitting style that you're used to. And so it is just a lot of these brawlers from all over the place in Europe, just really hurting each other pretty bad.
I love that. I love that for us. And I love wrestling so much. So Keiichi returns to Japan after Europe, but this time he is bringing back the Shooting Star Press. Now, Michael, what is a Shooting Star Press?
It's hard to fully... I'll try my best to explain, but it's a top rope maneuver. So you are standing on the top rope and then basically just do a full flip and kind of land head first. And so I've definitely seen and heard of wrestlers attempting it and landing directly on their head. So one of the most beautiful maneuvers that is so needlessly dangerous that I think it's been banned in the WWE, because there's just more risk than reward when it comes to it. But Samee, when you see somebody do it, it's incredible. It's one of the most beautiful. It's one of the most beautiful flips I've seen a wrestler attempt. And to know that Jushin, that's one of my favorite moves ever. And to know that like Jushin created that's crazy. But I think what we're talking about when he's designing this offense that you're talking about is I think that's a hallmark, and that's something that's really important about Jushin Liger is he's coming around at a time where he's an innovator of a certain style of wrestling that we're all very familiar with now. And so at the time, these kind of high flying aerial maneuvers, this was a newer thing mainly because he was smaller than everybody else. So he had a lot more of an acrobatic offense because he could do it because he was smaller. But now I think wrestling in general has moved to a place where all of this stuff is really commonplace. But I just want to give the credit of putting it in the context of when it was happening and being developed. This was mind blowing. This guy was pioneering pretty much a new style that the entire world uses to this day.
Right, which did pose a little bit of an interesting dilemma for me, like watching back, is that he was innovating all of these like high flying moves and stuff, but because I'm only familiar really with the modern times where everybody's flipping and moving so fast and just taking these really high risk maneuvers. So I was in this kind of area watching Jushin's like early 90s matches and being like, I know this is very cool, but it is a little harder to get excited. And yeah, I just felt like I needed to share that with you guys.
It's sort of like when your grandpa or something is like, let me show you one of my favorite movies, and it's an old black and white movie, and you're just like,
yeah,
oh, man. Like I get that this is important to film history or whatever, but
yeah.
Yeah, I guess the Three Stooges is kind of funny. I don't know. Like, but you can, I think when you get older or you're trying to be thoughtful about that kind of thing, you can look back at old movies that maybe have a different pace, tone, or style and can be like, I understand historically why this is significant and why if it weren't for these movies, the movies I watch today wouldn't exist or would be completely different. And I feel that the same is true for wrestling. Where I don't love watching old wrestling matches personally because I like you am more of a modern indie guy. I'm a hardcore wrestling guy, and so
sure,
I do think a lot of times with those kinds of matches I have to go back and view it through a completely different lens just to be like, I completely understand and appreciate what's going on here, even if it's not particularly my style anymore. So I'm just saying, Samee, I think it's totally fine. And like true Wrestling Academy, you showed up to class hungover, and we just appreciate that you're in class. You know what I mean?
Pro goof, baby. Thanks so much, Headmaster. I really appreciate it.
You're like, I got to go to wrestling history class. Let me just pop on my sunglasses and fall asleep in the front row.
Shucks, kicks dirt. So what I've really appreciated about finding out about Keiichi is that in the beginning, he was taking a lot of excursions away from Japan. And I really feel like he was just leaving the country to get, more influences and stuff. So that's how he's like innovating all of these moves and stuff. At one point, he leaves again and ends up in Canada. And he famously studies with Stu Hart. And I'm only talking really weird because Michael has expressed a little bit of his feelings about the Harts and how they wrestle, maybe behind closed doors. And now I'm exposing him a little bit.
Okay. Here's what I'll say, because I feel like you're making it sound like I'm doing some kind of hatchet job on the Harts. The Harts are great. Don't get me wrong. They wrestle a very technical style, which is not always my favorite thing. So incredible workers, incredible storytelling, and the influence they've had on wrestling as a whole cannot be discounted. Like the Hart Dungeon, I've heard so many people tell stories about they wouldn't be the wrestlers they were if they hadn't gone through that. Hart Foundation, Bret Hart, everything they've contributed to the wrestling business cannot be discounted, but it's just a style that is not my personal favorite. And so whenever I watch it, I have a tougher time because again, they're a very by the books technical. And like I said, if you've been listening to the podcast at all, you can hear my biases, which are very much like, all right, sick, but like when somebody get hit with a light tube. And so that's always a little bit tougher when someone's like, yeah, no, I look for a submission hold. And so I work over a body part until I can put them in a submission hold, and then they will tap out. And it's like, yeah, that's like a realistic, viable, that's almost more realistic than somebody going on thumbtacks. But me personally, I'm a little fucking sicko, and I'm like, yeah, get a trash can, yeah,
trip a little bit,
yeah, throw somebody in a dumpster, and then throw the dumpster off a ramp, dude. Yeah, that's what I'm all about. So, not saying that there's anything wrong with what they do. It's just fully not one of my wrestling biases.
So when I was watching all of Jushin's matches, or the ones that I caught anyway, before I was doing any sort of written word research, he's so technical that the words that you've said about the Harts, right, and about Bret Hart being so technical and clean were rattling around in my brain, and I went, oh, this feels like a Hart guy. And then I read that he is in fact a Hart guy, and I gave myself a pat on the back, and I was like, how do I try to trap Michael in this week's episode? And you did a great job.
The walls are closing in.
You again cannot be doofed, unfortunately.
Yeah, tune in next week when Samee point blank is like, today we're talking about wrestlers Michael hates.
I actually love Bret Hart.
I knew it. I knew you were gonna. It was only a matter of time. No. 10 episodes.
I always said that.
10 episodes.
I've never seen it. I've never watched them. I've really never watched them. I've never watched them.
This is the first thing I said when you first started getting when you first started getting into wrestling. I was like, you were gonna say you love Bret Hart just to piss me off, and it took 10 episodes.
And I did.
It took 10 episodes.
And I have not watched a single Bret Hart match.
You should watch someone where he fights Stone Cold and they have a double turn. It's actually a really good match.
Oh, fun. Okay. So Keiichi is in Canada training with the Harts. How does he get back to Japan, Michael?
To get Keiichi from Canada back to Japan, we need to take a little detour through a wrestler named Tiger Mask. So, who is Tiger Mask? In the 60s and 70s, there was a very popular manga series called Tiger Mask that was about a pro wrestler, pretty much. And so New Japan saw this and they were like, oh, a beloved character who's a wrestler? What if we just buy the rights to this and make him a real wrestler in New Japan? They get the rights. In the 80s, they debut a real life version of Tiger Mask in New Japan, and it's super popular. And it's one of those things where, much like in the Lucha Bros episode when we were talking about Pentagon, there have been 5 different Tiger Masks. There's the evil Black Tiger, who's the evil twin of Tiger Mask. And if you've ever played the video game Tekken, they have a character named King, who's pretty much a direct reference to Tiger Mask. Super popular, super lucrative. So, 1989, there is a new anime series called Jushin Liger. And basically, New Japan was like, oh, this was super popular with Tiger Mask. What if we just buy the rights to Jushin Liger and we debut a real life version of Jushin Liger? And that's exactly what they did. And they give this character to Yamada, and they basically call him back from Canada to be like, hey, we got this new character we want you to try. You're Jushin Liger now. And he's been Jushin Liger ever since.
What a great idea.
And I think, Samee, it just got me thinking, if you were going to play a character, if you were going to play a wrestler that was based off of that was a real life persona of a famous character, so a cartoon or a movie character or a superhero or something, who would you choose?
I had an answer prepared for you, but then my intrusive brain gave me another option. And so unfortunately, I'm going to have to go with the other option, and it's Squidward. This sucks, man.
What was your original one going to be?
The fucking main gargoyle from Gargoyles.
Oh, shit. What's his name?
That would have been so cool,
Lexington, right? Or something?
So the gargoyle from Gargoyles that I'm talking about is Goliath.
So you would be Goliath from Gargoyles.
Yeah.
That'd be sick.
But he's... Right? That would have been so sick for me to answer the right way instead of the wrong way.
Yeah.
Dang. Who would you be?
I couldn't think of anything cool, and I couldn't get past my first thought, which was just, oh, I'd be Scooby-Doo. I'd be like the wrestling version of I would just be Scooby-Doo, but
Ruh-roh.
yeah, exactly. And then be like, oh, he doesn't want to fight. But would you fight this guy for 2 Scooby snacks?
2 Scooby snacks?
Well, because that's what Velma would always do. She would have the Scooby snacks in between the fingers. So she'd be like, do you want 2 Scooby snacks or 3 Scooby snacks?
Wait, that's so confusing for children.
No, you would see the Scooby snacks in her hand, though.
Okay, sorry. Wow, that's so confusing for Samee.
Zoink, Scoob.
Oh, zoink, Scoob.
Yeah, I guess I would have you be my manager and you'd be Shaggy, and I'd be like, all right, Samee, I just need you to get really high and then tell me not to do the fight.
Which is a terrible idea because I suck high, and not even in a fun way. My brain just goes, everything is fuzzy, go to bed.
Like, oh shit, Scooby's manager's asleep on the outside of the ring. Like, what's going on? Or it would just cut to you and you're eating a huge sandwich.
I mean, cut to me at any point in my life and I'm eating a huge sandwich. So now that New Japan has given Keiichi this really, really cool character, he's back in Japan. He's going by Jushin Liger. After a little bit, he adds Thunder to it, so it's Jushin Thunder Liger, and it's just because the anime also thundered, correct?
Yeah. So
okay.
we didn't dive too deep into the anime. We watched it a little bit. So I think the premise is basically there's like a legendary being that this kid has an ancestral connection to. And by calling out Liger, he transforms into Jushin Liger, which is this
cool.
sort of ancient demon-esque character that is fighting. It's like a good demon that's fighting the bad demon. That's sort of what I was able to glean from just skimming through one episode, but it had a lot of 90s anime tropes to it that were not good, and I had to turn it off pretty immediately.
Yeah, don't give it a look.
Yeah, I wouldn't seek it out. I would just stick with the wrestler that it's based on. That's just me personally.
Yeah, you're speaking for us now.
Yeah, so I think to maybe put it in a context that people might know, if you've seen the movie or know the superhero Shazam, it seems like a very similar deal to that, where it's a kid, and then the kid yells out the magic phrase, and the magic phrase turns them into a superhero. So Jushin's presentation is almost exactly what the anime character looks like. So has sort of the red and white Power Rangers costume, and then has a demon mask with like crazy ears and fangs and is glaring, and then has crazy wild black hair. And that's largely the presentation that Jushin uses. And then I believe at a certain point in the anime, it became Jushin Thunder Liger, and just they kept it in line with the anime. But I think the anime went off the air not too long after its initial run. I don't think it's been around for 30 years the same way the actual character has been.
Good. It's at this point in my research that I just started digging into the matches of Jushin Thunder Liger. I checked out the Super Brawl in 1992 with Brian Pillman. It was WCW at the time. Again, these matches are kind of they're shortish, but I think one of the things that kind of bugged me a little bit about these is that because Jushin is from Japan, there's a heavy USA is better than you vibe.
It's kind of a xenophobic tilt to the chants a little bit. Yeah.
And I didn't love it. And it happens in both of the Brian Pillman matches that I watched. And I was a little bit like, oops, is Brian very patriotic, or is that just this is just the early 90s?
Yeah, I don't think being patriotic was ever Brian Pillman's deal. So I think the audience was bad.
The audience is bad. We were bad in the 90s. Brian wins this match, and they're trading some really, really interesting submission holds throughout the whole thing. So Jushin Liger's, I think it's his signature, or at least he does it a whole bunch, is the reverse surfboard submission hold. And basically, what it looks like is, you know, when you airplane somebody and they're like facing down.
Yeah, you put your feet on their stomach and
you go up.
Flying,
so the reverse surfboard is the person is on their back. Your feet are in their hamstrings, and then you're pulling their arms back, and you're still on your back, and then and they're up in the air, and it just looks so humiliating. And I hope that nobody ever does it to me.
Yeah, I think you're safe, dude. I think you'll be all right.
I mean, I haven't seen any wrestlers in the modern age doing it, and I wonder if it's banned or if it's just out of style.
Yeah, I think that submission wrestling is its own flavor, and certain wrestlers do it a lot. Like, if you ever pissed off Zack Sabre Jr., yeah, he might do that to you. If you ever pissed off Daniel Bryan, he might do that to you, or Bryan Danielson, he might do that to you. So there are a few old school guys who would surfboard the hell out of you if you pissed them off.
It looks so humiliating. Like, I'm not even sure how. I mean, it'll be probably really painful. So, anyways,
I'm just imagining a nightmare scenario of you leaving your apartment and there's just a fucking luchador out there, and you're like, no, and then it's just
shit.
Oh my god!
Oh my gosh. Well, what's extra humiliating is the preparation for the move takes a little bit. So you put your feet on the person's, I think, calves or hamstrings, and you kind of you yourself have to rock back. And there is a little bit of, okay, you have to
you step on them,
cooperate.
You rock them like a rocking horse, and then you lift them into the air. And so there are just so many different levels of somebody beating the hell out of you. You're like, no, please stop rocking me, please stop. And then you're up in the air and you're kind of like, please, I can't get out. You're like a turtle who's rolled onto its back, and it's like, I can't get out.
Like, fuck. How long do you think it would it take you for you to tap out of a reverse surfboard? Because I'm feeling like one rock or two before I'm even airborne, I'm out.
Oh, if they rock you one time, you're like, I know where this is going.
I know what's going on. Like, no, thank you.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I've always been like, I'd be so tough. And then my sister trained in judo, and she was just like, hey, do you want to see one of the holds I'm learning how to do? And I was like, yeah, sure. Let's see what you got. And she straight up put her wrist across my throat and then just locked it in. And it's the first time in my life I've ever had my windpipe just fully be like, no air in or out. It was just like, it was for a fraction of a second. But I can't tell you the panic that happened inside of my head when I was like, I'm screwed. I tapped out immediately. Like, my sister was just goofing around, and I was like, and I was like, how long did you have me in there for like a minute? And she was like, for 1 second. What are you talking about? And so in my mind, I was like, I'd like to think I'd be really tough, but as soon as I get up in that surfboard, I would probably be like, Jushin, please. Please let me go. You know what I mean? Like, I want to think I'd be tough, but he'd break me down, dude. He'd break me down so easily.
I really feel like I don't deserve this gold that's behind me anymore. I really don't. I bought it. I'm so sorry I didn't earn it.
Jushin Liger's gonna kick open your door and be like, I challenge you, dude.
Yeah, he's coming out of retirement to kick my ass and surfboard me. Ugh,
I feel like he could do that while retired. No offense, but
I mean, yeah, sure. He's at 35 years.
Yeah, it's like, hey, what are you doing in your retirement? Oh, I'm beating up fans. They have belts, and I've been collecting them. Yeah, they own a belt, really, so I've just been challenging them for it. Man, that'd be such a crazy. Yeah. I would love if WWE started doing that. Like, some vicious heel was just going to fans, be like, "Oh, you got a belt? I fucking challenge you for it," and then just taking belts from fans.
Yeah. A purchased belt actually means you're open invite to anybody who can challenge you.
Yeah, just Braun Strowman just started doing that, being like, "Give me your belt," and he was just beating up fans.
Sure.
Yes, sir. You got it, man.
Yep, no problem, dog.
You're
no problem.
900 feet tall. You can have it.
Have two.
Yeah, I feel like he would be like, "Give me your belt," and be like, "Oh, it's weird because this isn't even actually mine." So like. This doesn't bother me at all.
Giving him all of your regular clothes belts too.
Yeah. Do you want my car? It's probably too small for you, but do you want somebody to throw
cigarettes
into?
Use it as a roller skate,
or
no big. Okay, we gotta get back to 1992.
Yeah. So what was going on in 1992, Samee?
Okay, so Brian, the way that he pins Jushin is really interesting. So he basically tucks his feet into Jushin's armpits. Jushin's on the ground, and he flips him over. and then somehow gets it so that Jushin's like folded into himself,
Mhm.
but he's looking upwards and his legs are folded over his head. And then to add insult to injury, Brian goes into a bridge for the count out. And I will say that this count out does happen much quicker than all of the other like close falls, question mark, near falls, and that it felt a little bit suspicious, but I didn't see any drama following the Super Brawl 1992.
So that was in WCW, and then he hops back over to Japan to fight Ultimo Dragon for the junior heavyweight championship, correct?
Yes, and that happened on January 4th, 1993. And this match was actually a lot more high flying and fast paced than I was expecting. So this whole time, everywhere is like, oh yeah, Jushin Thunder Liger, he's high flying, he's doing high risk maneuvers and all this stuff. But I wasn't really seeing it, or I really didn't see that too much at the Super Brawl. So I don't know if it was just that Jushin felt more comfortable on home turf or something.
I also think too, I mean, maybe for this one, because I think Ultimo Dragon is a pretty legendary figure in Lucha Libre. I mean, from our Okada Omega episode, I believe he trained Okada, or was one of the people who helped train Okada. And so I think you've got a very capable, high flying dance partner in Ultimo Dragon. So maybe Jushin Liger in this match is able to be like, oh, let me just have some fun and show everybody what I can do, because Ultimo Dragon can basically do it too. And if I recall, this match, Liger is in a blue suit, right? So he's got a really cool blue colorway to his look.
Yeah, he's wearing blue instead of his regular red.
Yeah, this match was a ton of fun because I think, like you were saying, this one is just a lot closer to the modern day cruiserweight, light heavyweight bouts that we're used to. So it is a lot more of guys doing crazy flips and hurricanranas and all jumping in and out of the ring. And it was a lot of fun.
So this high flying Jushin Liger that's made an appearance in this match is kind of what people are familiar with. I think maybe I was picking the wrong matches to watch or something. So for most of his career, Jushin has been this high flying, like lucha libre submission holds, like high risk maneuvers guy. But in August of 1996, he had to get surgery on his brain because there was a brain tumor in there and he got it removed. And I made it a point to watch a match like basically right before August 1996 and then right after August 1996. And pre-brain surgery, I watched Jushin and Brian Pillman lock up again in 1995. And maybe I chose this match because it was set in the Mall of America. Who knows? But
wait, hold on. They're wrestling in the Mall of America?
Yeah, they're wrestling in the Mall of America. It's a WCW event. And I mean, there's no way around it. They're in a damn mall and there are like they're wide shots and you can see people riding the up escalator in the background. And I gave myself a little giggle thinking about if somebody was wanting to watch the match, like was there to watch the match but couldn't find anywhere. So they had to just ride the escalators up and down through the whole entire show.
That's so funny. It's because to me, this seems like a situation where when I was younger, my mom was not as into me liking wrestling. And so I think if I had showed up to the mall to get school clothes or something and there was a wrestling match going on, I'd be like, oh my God, Mom, there's a thing. She's like, we have to get school clothes. Come on. And then I would just be like on the escalator being like, oh man.
Oh, shucks. Just like, ugh. That's very funny. So Brian wins this match again with a surprise roll up. I just feel like there's just some weird thing with Brian and rolling up Jushin, but that was a pre-surgery match that I watched. Here's where it gets a little weird. So there are two matches that are pretty soon after Jushin's brain surgery. One is with Rey Mysterio at Starrcade in 1996, and the other, which I kind of put the pieces together, I don't know, like today, this match. So again, Jushin had surgery in August of 1996, and then he faces the Great Muta in October of 1996. And like, do you have any background information on the Great Muta at all?
I don't know a ton about him, but he's a pretty infamous guy, and there's a colloquial thing that wrestling fans have called the Muta scale, and the Muta scale is how much blood is in a match. So
Okay.
all I know is this guy is a real sicko, a real violent guy.
I thought that watching the Rey Mysterio match was like a lot and too much to handle for somebody who just had brain surgery. But then I watched this match between Jushin and the Great Muta, and it was only a month after his surgery. And I've got to say, it seemed like Muta wanted to kill him again. Like, just like he tombstone pile drived him through a table. I don't know. It was just like so savage. Because
he had brain surgery a month ago, and then Muta is targeting his head during the match.
Yeah, pretty much. And like throughout this whole match, you can tell who Muta is. Like I didn't have any previous experience with him. Now that we know that there's a Muta scale, his entrance costume is also very scary. So he has this intense hooded mask, but the mask itself is like silver, I think silver plated, and then he has a dragon's head on his shoulder, or snake's head maybe, and he takes it off, and then his skin face is painted gold and black and very disturbing. And I think we talked a little bit about how heels kind of really slow the pace down of a match, and Muta's for sure doing this. He's creeping around, like the bell rings and he slides himself. He like slithers out of the ring and he goes and scares the audience a little bit. He's just like, ah! But yeah, so it's a pretty savage matchup. Muta's just basically handing Jushin's ass to himself. He's throwing him around. He's out of the ring. He's in the ring. It's really just so uncalled for, just regularly. And then the added layer of, oops, Jushin just had brain surgery a month ago. Muta, can you like ease up a little bit?
Can you relax,
of course
dude?
Not. He cannot relax at all. He even starts clawing at Jushin's mask. And he thinks that Jushin's just tapped out at this point. So he leaves to go grab a chair. And when he comes back, Jushin's mask is gone. And he pops up all wild. And his face is painted. And it's white and red, I think. It's very demonic. Like both of them are now very scary. And the tides really change. And so now Jushin's just moving so evil. Like he, at one point, finds a spike and he goes after Muta, and you can hear a child actually start sobbing out of fear because Jushin's being so fucking scary.
I think that kid is accurate, because the main thing about Jushin Liger's character is he's very much like a superhero and he's like a good dude. So to watch, to watch Spider-Man or Spider-Man or Superman all of a sudden pull off his mask and he's just like, like underneath it, I would freak the fuck out if it was just like, who the hell is this? It's like this guy who's only ever been this like, I believe in doing the right things. It's the right thing to do. And now he's just like, no, I want to kill the Great Buddha. You're like, who is this guy? I feel for that child. I would be like,
yeah, it really seems that like as good and chivalrous as Jushin Liger was, Jushin without a mask is as evil as that. Now Jushin's beating the shit out of Muta, and it looks like Muta's done for. But Muta is famous for the mist that we see like Asuka doing or Shinsuke. So he mists Jushin and he ends up grabbing the spike, and Muda is the one that ends up being able to spike Jushin in the head, because there is that little bit of a reminder that even though we've just seen Jushin be so evil that we wanted Muda to be okay, he's actually the evil guy. And so he spikes Jushin. He does this like, I don't know, like back handspring into Jushin's body, and Muda shooting star presses him and he takes the win. And after this entire match, there's this like new like evil cloud like kind of hanging around Jushin, and New Japan named him Kishin Liger, and Kishin is a term for an evil god, which I think was pretty fun.
It becomes a very, very rare form where there's like he's normally Jushin Liger, and then occasionally I think he does it 3 times total in his career, where the circumstances get so great that Kishin has to come out, and every time he does, it's a pretty big deal. So this is the first time it ever happened, and so people were shocked at this. They were like, I cannot believe our hero has this darkness and this evil inside of him.
You gotta let a good guy be bad sometimes. Otherwise, you're gonna get the Kishin. In my quest for finding like, oh, did the brain surgery really affect Jushin at all? I ran into that instead of this match that he has with very young and spry Rey Mysterio a couple months after. Rey Mysterio and Jushin butt heads at an event called Starrcade in 1996, and there really isn't a lot to point out. It seems like in WCW, Jushin is the bad guy. He's the foreigner, whatever. So he's moving really slowly. And when I was watching this match, I was like, oh, okay, like the brain surgery is caught up to him. He's moving really slow. But what I really enjoyed seeing is spry Rey Mysterio did a maneuver that looked a little bit like a 619, and I'm not sure if he even coined that move quite yet, because this is one of the first televised spots that Rey Mysterio Jr. has done.
That's cool.
These two, Rey and Jushin, are, similarly built, aka short kings, and I thought that they would have like a very rich, long history, but it turns out that this Starrcade match is the only one that the only time that they've met in a singles match, which is interesting. But like Jushin was tossing him around pretty hard. I wouldn't be surprised if Rey Mysterio was just like, I don't want to wrestle with that guy anymore.
Yeah. Oh, actually, it hurts when I fight him. I don't want to do that.
Yeah, he's too mean. Oh my gosh, I forgot. So the commentators for Starrcade were Tony Schiavone, Bobby the Brain Heenan, and then Dusty Rhodes. And I've never really seen anything with Dusty Rhodes aside from like tiny little clips, so I didn't really. He's got a very interesting voice.
Yeah, you heard Dusty Rhodes, baby.
Dusty Rhodes, baby. And so that was interesting and exciting to hear. Now that I'm obsessed with Cody Rhodes, sorry everyone.
Yeah, you're hearing him talk, being like, "I love your son."
I love father-in-law. But yeah, Dusty was being so silly, and at some point, like for a little bit, he was trying to gently be like, "Oh, Jushin Liger, you gained a bit of weight," and I'm like, "You just had brain surgery. What are you doing, dog?" And so yeah, so those were the matches that I looked into. I also did, out of curiosity, watch a match of Jushin Liger's from 2017 where he's going against a wrestler named Ryusuke Taguchi, and that was more of the same Jushin Liger stuff. He even ended up doing a reverse surfboard, which I guess I love and also hate.
I was looking around. I really wanted to find just if there was any cool storylines, and one of the big ones that people kept referencing and kept popping up is they were like, well, one of his coolest feuds was one that happened at pretty much the end of his career that he had with a wrestler named Minoru Suzuki. And so I just dove in on that. And so I think with that base of knowledge is like, who is Jushin Liger? Like, what his whole deal is. Like, let's dive into just a specific feud that he had truly at the end of his career. To understand this feud, I think first we need to we know who Jushin is. I think to understand, we need to get our head around like, who is Minoru Suzuki. So let's dive in. Let's start there. Minoru Suzuki, look, there are tons of wrestlers who their whole deal is that they're a tough guy and this person wants to kill you for real. And Minoru Suzuki is absolutely one of those guys, but his credentials 100% line up with that kind of character that he plays. So more or less his character is like a sociopath who doesn't seem as interested. The thing he seems the most interested in is legitimately hurting people and kind of gets off on it a little. Like his character really enjoys that and has fun with it. And he has this pro wrestling style that's called shoot wrestling. And so to briefly explain what shoot wrestling is, in wrestling, there are two terms. There's a work, and that's everything that's part of the storyline. And then there's a shoot, and that's real. So when somebody wrestles in a shoot style, that means they're a lot more full contact than a traditional wrestling match would be. So if someone is shoot slapping you in the face, they're just slapping you in the face. Whereas a wrestler might pull their punch or their slap a little bit. So Minoru Suzuki does not pull his punches. And he's all about chopping and slapping and choking and slamming. And his character, that's what he likes. That's what he's all about. And so he has a nickname that I've never fully understood. And so when I did a little diving in, people call him Murder Grandpa. And so, but I guess fans call him that. And so I was looking into, why is he called Murder Grandpa? What's going on here? And so I guess the deal is he plays the Minoru Suzuki character. And then outside of the character, because again, he's had a career for just as long as Jushin Liger has. So he is now also in his 50s. And so there's this man in his 50s who, when he's playing a character on TV, is a real bastard, a real psychopath. But then outside of it, him on social media, him when he meets fans, is a totally chill, cool, older guy. So he's got real grandpa energy. And so he is the murder grandpa. So that's his whole deal. And
I don't know if I buy that.
Look, I've seen it on so many forums. People call him Murder Grandpa. I never fully understood it. But again, I haven't really interacted too much with his outside of the ring persona. But I saw so many Reddit stories of people being like, he was the sweetest guy. And he came up and I was afraid to meet him because I knew about his Minoru Suzuki character. And then he came up and talked to me about the Pikachu on my shirt. And then we talked about Pokemon for a while. And he was super nice and he took a bunch of photos with us and then he left.
I mean, I buy the fact that people have had really, really good, gentle interactions with him, but when you're unleashing that sort of violence, like I don't see.
Yeah, dude, I know. I'm with you. I've seen footage of him doing a pile driver to somebody on a bullet train. So like, I'm with you. I'm always afraid of this guy, and the grandpa stuff. I also have not experienced a lot, but I think a lot of people really lovingly are like, oh, Minoru Suzuki, what a sweetheart. I was like, where's that part? Because I've only ever seen the murder part. I've only ever seen that he's an old guy who loves to hurt people and gets off on it. So anyways, Suzuki has been around as long as Jushin Liger is. So he also made his debut in 1988. So he was right around, maybe a little bit after Jushin Liger makes his debut. These guys started kind of around the same time, but they went in two different directions. So Jushin Liger, he bounced around, right? He went to Canada, he came back, he became the Jushin Liger character. Whereas Suzuki followed his mentor out of the New Japan dojo and started like getting into the world of legitimate mixed martial arts, basically. And so he started doing that. And so he founded a company in 1993 called like Pancreas, I think, which is based on the ancient Greek fighting style, basically, like the original fighting style, pretty much. It's based on that.
Okay.
I don't fully, I like looked up a bunch of different pronunciations. I couldn't quite get one I was like, is it pancreas? Is that what everybody's saying? Like, I really don't know. But it's based on
who's
ancient Greek fighting, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as we know, it is the precursor to modern day MMA. It's like one of the first places that helped popularize MMA as we know it. Was started in Japan. Minoru Suzuki, he helped popularize it. So he is just an MMA fighter for like 10 years. And he's just been legitimately fighting people. He's got like a pretty decent record of doing MMA against some pretty tough customers. And then by the time we get to the 2000s, he's now been doing MMA for about 10 years. And he's like, I don't think I'm physically where I need to be competitive in this sport. So I'm going to do one more match, then I'm going to call it a day. And then he's supposed to fight a guy who is the IWGP heavyweight champion in New Japan at the time. His name is Kensuke Sasaki, I believe is his name. And this guy he's a heavyweight. He's MMA trained, and I think he came up around the same time as Minoru Suzuki. So this would be a thing. And I also think in Japan at the time, there was a lot more cross-pollination between those spectacle things where it's like, oh, we'll have a wrestler fight an MMA guy is kind of a fun exhibition. So there was a lot more history of that at the time. It wasn't just a harebrained idea that somebody had. It was, I think some people had done stuff like that. And I think he said he was inspired by Antonio Inoki, who was one of the founders of New Japan, fought like Muhammad Ali. So they had a wrestler fight a boxer, and it was a interesting exhibition.
So this was like the YouTubers box situation, but
I kind of in a way where they had an MMA fighter. They were going to have him fight the IWGP heavyweight champion, and it was going to be Minoru Suzuki's last official MMA exhibition. But there was a problem. Kensuke got injured and he wasn't able to do it. And so at the last minute, he had to pull out. So they very last minute were like, okay, well, who are we going to get to be in this final fight with Minoru Suzuki? And they're like, let's get Jushin Liger to come in. And
the light heavyweight champion.
Yeah, the light heavyweight champion. And let's also be clear, has had a little bit of training, but is not an MMA trained fighter. He's a wrestler. And he's pretty much been a wrestler. And I would say to Jushin's credit, he took it seriously. He hopped in and he went to do it. And this is not a predetermined thing. This was a real MMA fight. And Samee, Minoru Suzuki, mopped the floor with him, and
it ain't so.
He made him tap out in 90 seconds, pretty much. And I've watched the whole match, and basically Liger comes in. He's got a shorter mask, and he's mostly in MMA gear, but he's got like a much more. He's not doing his traditional mask, obviously, but it's like you can see his mouth, you can see his stuff, his hair. And he tries a spinning kick that someone would do in a wrestling match to get things started.
Kodo roll.
So he tries to do that, and Suzuki immediately takes him to the ground. And then basically Liger is fighting for his life. And so he basically like, and then Suzuki's on top of him, and then he's just protecting his face, and it's ugly. He's trying to get out of it. He tries at one point to spin around, completely gets into choke position. Suzuki puts him in a rear naked choke, and he immediately taps out. 90 seconds.
That's wild, dog.
And I think we have the context now of if somebody loses really quickly in MMA, probably because of social media, people will immediately just dogpile and be like, oh, this is so embarrassing. But I think most of the time people were like, that was really cool of him to do that. He's not an MMA fighter, and he was pretty cool about the whole situation. So I don't think anybody thinks it's super embarrassing. And I think Suzuki gives him some respect for stepping in the ring a little bit, being like, yeah, man, like good for you trying to do this. In typical wrestler fashion, Jushin Liger is just like, hey, you may have beaten me, but give me 2 years.
No.
And I'll be able to beat you in a rematch. Ha ha ha.
Nah,
and again, everybody's just like, pro wrestling, ha ha ha. It's all good, whatever. So that is Minoru Suzuki's last official MMA fight, and that is Jushin Liger's only MMA fight, because why would he ever do that again?
No, that's so silly. That would be so silly.
Yeah, so from there, these guys go their own separate ways, right? Minoru Suzuki, he bounces around a lot of places in Japan. So he goes to All Japan. He goes to another company called Pro Wrestling Noah. He bounces back to New Japan for a little bit. He forms his own stable called Suzuki Gun, which basically means like Suzuki's army. And so it is a lot of these tough hitting, brawling kind of guys. So now instead of doing MMA, he's now doing the shoot style in the ring. And he's got those credentials for being like, this guy was an MMA fighter and now he's doing wrestling. And when he's wrestling people, he's just chopping and slapping the hell out of them and seems to really be enjoying it. That's the groundwork, right? That's 2002. We cut all the way to 2017. We're just in a random match. Minoru Suzuki's fighting somebody. I forget who. And Jushin Liger is on commentary. And then while Minoru Suzuki's on the outside just beating the hell out of this guy, he just looks and he sees Liger sitting there and he just reaches across and slaps him in the face for no reason. And
no reason.
And Liger pops up and immediately throws a chair at him. And there's a moment where they're just like, what the fuck? Like, you can see Liger getting pissed off. He doesn't know what to do. And all Suzuki does is just start laughing. Like, it's the funniest thing in the world to him that this guy's so mad and is throwing chairs at him and stuff. And I was looking around to be like, okay, did Liger do something to piss him off, or were they in some kind of feud? No, he just did it. He just did it because he was there. But we wouldn't get the answer to why for another 2 years. So around 2019, same sort of thing kind of starts to happen. Suzuki kind of pops out of nowhere and he just like is attacking Liger with a chair and he's going for his mask. And everyone's like, the fuck? Like, get out of here. Because like we talked about with luchadors, that's his whole identity, right? He's been doing this for 30 years at this point. And all of a sudden this guy is just like disrespecting him and is immediately just like, yeah, no, let's get this off of here. And then they're called Young Lions, but they're sort of wrestlers in training who kind of fill in as the ring crew. They come in and Suzuki just immediately just starts bopping them. And we get to this event. It's a 3-night event called Destruction. And so it runs in 3 different cities, right? So there's 3 different destructions. I don't really know the name, but I'm going to try my best. So the first one is Destruction in Beppu, I guess. During that match, it's the same thing. He goes for the mask. He attacks the Young Lions. And after the match, Liger basically gets on the microphone and he's just like, okay, you wanna pick on these young guys? Why don't you stand up to me? Like, I've been around a long time. Like, I'm sick of dealing with your crap. Like, why don't we just have that out? Why don't we just fight one-on-one right now? Suzuki pops up from the back and everyone's going crazy. Like, oh, we're about to get this fight between them. He walks all the way to the ringside and he closes the gate and he locks it. And then he just starts laughing and he walks away. And he cuts this super chilling promo backstage where he's basically just like, what'd you say to me in 2002? Give you 2 years? How many years has it been, man? How many years do you have left? He's like, you don't have years, do you? You have months. You said you're going to retire in January. It's like, here we are in September and it's ticking down. How long are you going to avoid me, Liger? And everyone's just like, what the fuck? So then the next night he's like, I don't want to fight Liger. I want to fight the real you. And everyone's like, what the fuck is he talking about? So the next night, we're in Destruction in Kagoshima. There's an 8-man tag. And during the match, Suzuki and his guys, they just like dogpile and they pull off Liger's mask. And it's like, again, like when we talked about the Lucha Bros episode, when the mask goes off, he immediately is like, he's not even paying attention anymore. Everybody's running him. They're covering him. And Suzuki's just sitting on the turnbuckle holding the mask. And it's as though he's cut off his head. He's just displaying it. And he's kind of like,
oh my God.
Can you believe it? Like, hey, oh, look what I got. And he shows up. He's walking around and he cuts this promo backstage where he's just like, I don't want to fight Liger. I want to fight the real you underneath. I want to like, give me that guy. So then the next night we're at Destruction in Kobe, another 8-man tag. And during the match, Liger is like pissed off. He pulls off the mask and who do you think's underneath? It's Kishin Liger, a persona he has not done in years. He's only done it
Fuck.
3 times, right? He's now this like super violent thing. He gets the spike again and he's like going, he shoots, he like sprays black mist in Suzuki's face, and then he like falls back onto a table and he runs at him with the spike and he stabs into the table. Suzuki jumps out of the way just in time, but like you see the spike go in and you're like, if he hadn't gotten out of the way, he truly would have been fucked. He spikes it so hard, he gets disqualified, and he's just like absolutely like beating the hell out of Suzuki. And how do you think Suzuki responds when he gets backstage? He's covered in oil. He's just laughing his ass off. And he's basically just like, finally, man, like, let's do it. Let's do it. And so they set up a match for a month later, King of Pro Wrestling. And basically, Jushin Liger is really disappointed with himself, where he's like, I can't believe I stooped to that level. I can't believe I let like that darker side of me. So you will get me at King of Pro Wrestling, but I'm going to be a different version of myself. And it's a new form called Battle Liger. And I hadn't heard anybody talk about this, but it was basically kind of the best of both worlds. I have Kishin's intensity, but I have the moral compass of Jushin, and in between I'm able to like access both sides of myself to tap into this fight. I'll be honest with you, I hadn't heard anybody talk about this, but I was looking at it, I really felt like Battle Liger looked almost exactly like the mask he wore at the MMA fight that he did in 2002. So it really felt like he was referencing this like old fight that they had to like kick this all off, this thing that they had not touched in like 15 years, something like that. When they're doing it, I'll be honest with you, when I was thinking about it, I was like, I don't understand why everybody is so drawn to this match. And then it really started to click for me when I saw them make their debuts, right? Where Jushin is this bright, colorful superhero figure, and Minoru Suzuki, who's been around almost as long as him, is almost the exact opposite. He's just wears all black. His whole thing is intensity and sadism. And so you have truly a superhero, supervillain setup just right at your feet, and they haven't really interacted all that much. So walking into this, it was strange. It was a very strange match that it took me a little bit to wrap my head around what the story was, like what they were doing. Because it just, to me, don't get me wrong, it's hard hitting. They're going outside the ring. They're getting chairs involved. They're getting tables involved. They're slamming each other into the iron gates. And it just felt like Suzuki was holding back the entire time, almost like he was waiting for something. Like he's doing the match, but he's sort of waiting for something inside of Liger. That's what it felt like. And they're ratcheting up the intensity, but it still to me felt like Suzuki was holding back the entire time. And it gets to the point where this is a trope I've seen 1,000 times in Japanese wrestling matches, but I think it was really effective here just because two guys, they're in their 50s, they have this long history with each other, and it's a test of strength. Two men stand in the middle of the ring and they basically just trade chops or blows, and it's just kind of who's gonna fall first. And they're trading, and then something kind of snaps inside Liger, and he just starts like, he's no longer going for the chest. He's like slapping him in the face. He's slapping him as hard as he can. It's like tension, hitting him. And I felt like you could see something inside of Suzuki where he's like, finally, there you are. And then just with that, he plants him immediately. Like he, for the first time, I feel, went like full strength. And he just like knocked Liger the fuck out. And he like falls. And then when he's down, he grabs him and he sets him up for the pile driver. Then and only then is he able to hit the pile driver and put him down. 1, 2, 3. He gets the pin, right? But he's not done yet. He's like, I unlocked it within you. Like, I destroyed your fucking legacy. He rolls outside the ring. He grabs a chair. And the young lions are inside. They're tending to him because it's like, yeah, Liger's like center of the ring. It looks like he's fucking dead. And so it's like they slide in, they roll, and they try to get him. Suzuki sees the two young lions, and he just starts peeling them off with chairs. He hits him, he beats him up, he throws him out of the ring, and then he just sees like defenseless in the center of the ring. He sees Liger just sitting there lifeless, and he raises the chair over his head, and then he throws the chair out of the ring, and then he does like a full like on his hands and knees bows to Liger.
Wow.
And everybody goes like, oh, like it's like it was a tension release like you rarely feel, where it was just like this guy
Wow.
who's been nothing but a bastard his entire career had to give it up for Jushin Liger. And it was really cool. I saw this quote on Fightful where they did like a little bit of an interview where they talked to Jushin Liger about the whole Minoru Suzuki feud. And I'm going to just read it here because I feel like it really helped me understand the story and what they were really going for. And then when you see it, and when you see it build to that, I was like, this is super beautiful, actually. So I'm going to read the quote now. It says, "At the end of the day, Suzuki and I both did our learning in the Fujiwara dojo. Our roots are the same, and to an extent, I understand where Suzuki was coming from, arguing about me going quietly into retirement. But to get to that singles match, man, he made my blood boil. I had been seen as this kindly old man figure because I was retiring. Pro wrestling is combat, though. If you're not in that mindset, there's no point in being in the ring. I'd be lying if I wasn't a bit vexed that Suzuki carried me so completely in the palm of his hand, but he understood just who Jushin Liger is, and he lit a fire under my ass, too. That's why I thanked him on the mic, perhaps." And so it really was like, oh, what Suzuki was doing was just like, I know that you're a real fighter, and everybody's just thought you're this old goofball in a superhero costume, but I know that you're actually a fighter, and I wanted to fucking bring that out of you. And it wasn't until he like broke down and out of anger just started slapping Suzuki that he was just like, there he is. Now you can retire. I got goosebumps,
Damn,
dude. That shit's crazy. Ah!
Yeah, I got goosebumps. That's wild. Are you the Minoru Suzuki to my Jushin Liger?
I honestly feel like you're more of a Minoru Suzuki than I am.
Because I'm evil.
Yeah, but also that you like get off on it.
So rude. So rude. Not true. Keep it in.
As we said, this was not his final match. He would go on. So this is in October. He would go on to retire at Wrestle Kingdom, which is sort of the New Japan version of WrestleMania. It's the biggest event that they have on the card. So he would go on to have his final matches there, and then he would be done. But I think most people were like, what an incredible last feud that he got to kind of sneak in under the buzzer. Yeah, it was just really cool.
I do really appreciate I'm going to retire in a year or two and then wait for that storyline that is able to sprout out of there just at the last moment. That's really that's very cool.
Yeah, when they announced the retirement ahead of time, it really did. And when you watch that promo, it's so chilling. And I understand where people were like, oh, Minoru Suzuki, his character he's kind of a mob boss. And when you see it, he's doing it on his hand. He's ticking down. He's like, how many months do you have? He's like, October, November, January. Then what it was so calculating and so evil. And then, just watching him have the mask and playing with it.
That's crazy.
Was so diabolical that it made me really understand Minoru Suzuki in a way that I never had. I always understood that people thought he was kind of cute, and I almost feel like it's ironic a little bit, where it would be people being like, oh, Nick Gage, he's so adorable, and you're like, yeah, he also pizza cutters the fuck out of people, so I don't know what you're
sure.
I don't know why we're making him cute. Like, he seems like a nice enough guy, but he wants to hurt you. That's his whole deal. That's what he loves. That's what Suzuki loves too.
Right. Oh man, that's good. That was good. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, and so Samee, that's Jushin Thunder Liger. We got into his history. Liger. We got into his very last feud. What are your thoughts? What did you take away?
I think that a slow burn feud that somebody puts in their heart in 2002 and releases years later. Probably the best type of feud that ever exists.
I think it's a lot easier to have a story with someone if you really are able to mine your personal history with them. I think that always leads to the best results. So obviously, these guys have a lot of respect for each other. Minoru Suzuki, Liger was not his first choice, but he still did an MMA, his last ever MMA fight with him. And so there had to have been some kind of respect there. And so just to be like, okay, cool, these guys have been aware of each other, they've been fighting, and then they're able to mine that personal history to then tell like one cool, this is my one last shot story. And I think that's great. And then Minoru Suzuki still wrestling. Jushin Liger retired, and these guys are old school. And so they did the old school thing where since Jushin Liger was on his way out, he wanted to make Minoru Suzuki look good for being the guy who beat him one last time.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And Jushin Liger is an incredibly legendary, decorated wrestler and foundational wrestler, I'd say, for a lot of people.
Absolutely. And I think we touched on this, but I just wanted to underline it here, especially after going through and seeing, like we mentioned, he was in matches with Rey Mysterio, who I think most people would say is one of the most influential high flyers in wrestling. He was wrestling Jushin Liger when at the midpoint of Jushin's career. He was helping this young up and coming high flyer who would go on to change the game. Rey Mysterio was probably so greatly influenced by that, and there are so many people who are smaller high flyer wrestlers that wouldn't do what they're doing if it weren't for the influence that Jushin Liger had, just because, again, he was a smaller guy. He wanted to wrestle. They tried to tell him no. He almost, but he didn't accept that answer. He tried to make it on his own, and almost out of pity, they let him into New Japan, and he went on to have one of the most influential careers of all time. And so I just found this episode so incredibly inspiring because I'd always heard the name. I always heard how much respect people had for him. And that was the main thing I found in my research, was just so many people who maybe got their start in Japan or now in WWE. Anytime somebody brought up Jushin Liger, everybody would talk about him as though, like, kind of like Terry Funk, like we were talking about, one of those folk heroes who is so important to this wrestling business. He completely changed it and popularized it. And it was one of those things, like, I didn't know that much about him because he wasn't inside the bubble of what I focus on as a wrestling fan. And that's just another reason why I love doing this show and doing this podcast, is we get to get outside that bubble whenever we can. And yeah, it takes us to the 80s and maybe wrestling matches that we understand on a theoretical level why they're important, but they don't quite have that same tension that modern matches do, and just kind of expand our palate. And I think that's how we get better as wrestling fans, is we taste some stuff where we're like, on first viewing, this tastes bland, but when I dig deeper, there's actually a lot more complex flavors happening here, and it helps me appreciate all of wrestling as a whole, so we can be better fans moving forward.
Headmaster's gonna headmaster. That was really nice, Michael.
I guess I was just trying to say, like, it's okay when wrestling's boring.
I mean, look, I don't want anyone to be upset at me. You can be a little mad at me, but just if you want to talk to me about it, come with kindness. And just, if there are matches that you know are very, very good and want to show me something that I didn't see with the matches that I watched, then send them over. I'm happy to be learning from not only Michael or Wikipedia, but also listeners.
Well, we just wanted to thank you for listening to Wrestling Academy. It's hosted, produced, and edited by me, Michael Classic, and you, Samee Junio. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Wrestling Academy Pod. Send us an email at wrestlingacademypod@gmail. And honestly, if you have any tips on Ween Kid, we need to find him. Tag us, #WhoisWeenKid. Get in touch with us. We need to know. We need to find this guy and talk to him about wrestling. Nothing weird. We don't want to be weird. Don't invade this guy's privacy.
Not weird at all. No weird. No weird. Follow us wherever you get your podcast, but check out Spotify, where we have polls and Q&As for every single episode. Check out our website, wrestlingacademy.university. That is where our sweet little hotline is to find Ween Kid. And yes, that is our real URL, because we commit to any and all bits. Class is dismissed.
We're coming for you, Ween Kid. We're going to find you.
Let's get that Ween Kid.